This is a map of Taiwan, and what you can see is merely the surface of an island shrouded in enigma.
Archaeologists excavated and restored relic after relic, producing a catalog of treasures. Most spectacular discovery of all was this jade and silk burial suit.
And ancient secrets. Nestled between the Philippine Sea and the East China Sea, Taiwan appears modest in size, yet holds mysteries disproportionate to its geographical footprint. For centuries, this island has quietly harbored unexplained phenomena, archaeological anomalies, and historical enigmas that continue to baffle scientists and historians alike.
The Dao fishermen would often catch enough to tide them over the winter months before the next flying fish season in spring. Most of the fish are dried to be consumed later in the year. And if they catch more than they need, they are happy to share them, even with strangers. To them, catching flying fish is a privilege to be shared.
What lies beneath the lush mountains and surrounding azure waters? What secrets remain embedded in its volcanic soil? Join us as we peel back the layers of Taiwan's most perplexing discoveries, some recently unearthed, others hidden in plain sight for generations. But before we dive into Taiwan's modern mysteries, we must first understand how human history on this island began with a discovery that rewrote archaeological textbooks. In 1971, a routine geological survey in Taiwan's southern Badlands near Tsochen took an unexpected turn when researchers stumbled upon fragments of an ancient human skull. Little did they know, they had just discovered the oldest human remains ever found on the island. The skeleton, radiocarbon dated to approximately 20,000 to 30,000 years ago, became known as Tsochen Man, and it immediately challenged existing theories about human migration in East Asia. What makes Tsochen Man so significant isn't just his age, but what his very existence implies. Prior to this discovery, scientists believed humans had arrived in Taiwan only about 6,000 years ago, crossing from mainland China when sea levels were lower. The revelation of a human presence dating back potentially 30,000 years suggests a much earlier migration route, possibly from the Philippines or other parts of Southeast Asia during the last ice age when sea levels were dramatically lower. The skeletal analysis revealed even more surprises. Tsochen Man's features showed characteristics distinct from both modern Taiwanese Aboriginal peoples and Han Chinese populations, suggesting he belonged to a previously unknown genetic lineage that may have disappeared entirely. Anthropologists noted similarities to both Australo-Melanesian and early East Asian populations, positioning Taiwan as a crucial crossroads in human migration patterns. The lost city of Sanxiantai. The mysteries of Taiwan's past aren't confined to its land, they extend into the surrounding seas, where one of the island's most compelling enigmas lurks beneath the waves near the eastern coast. Off the shores of Sanxiantai, known for its iconic 8-arch bridge connecting the mainland to a small island, local fishermen had long told tales of seeing strange stone formations beneath the water during particularly clear days. Most dismiss these as natural rock formations or the product of overactive imaginations, until 1982, when a team of divers investigating the area made a stunning discovery. Approximately 100 meters offshore and at a depth of 15 to 20 meters, they found what appeared to be arranged stone structures with distinct right angles and geometric patterns inconsistent with a natural formation. Further exploration revealed what some researchers believe to be the remnants of a submerged settlement, a series of stone platforms, wall-like structures, and what appears to be a primitive harbor system. Dating these structures has proven challenging, but preliminary analysis suggests they may be between 2,000 and 6,000 years old, potentially placing them among the oldest human-made structures in the region. What's particularly puzzling is that based on our understanding of sea level changes, this area would have been underwater even 6,000 years ago, raising questions about how and why these structures were built. Some archaeologists propose they were constructed during a brief period of lower sea levels, while others suggest they might have been ceremonial structures built partially underwater by ancient inhabitants. A minority of researchers even propose more controversial theories among that advanced prehistoric peoples possessed engineering capabilities beyond what we've previously attributed to ancient Pacific cultures. The Ghost Caves of Kinmen Island. While the mysteries of ancient Taiwan lie buried in earth and sea, more recent enigmas are hidden in plain sight, carved into the very rock of its outlying islands. Just a few kilometers from mainland China lies Kinmen Island.
In the Kinmen Island specifically, being really the last battle line was drawn literally right there.
Taiwan's front line during decades of Cold War tension. Visible from shore on clear days, Chinese territory looms as a constant reminder of the island's precarious position. But Kinmen's most fascinating secrets aren't found on its surface. They're buried deep within a labyrinthine network of military tunnels known locally as the Ghost Caves. Carved through solid granite mountains during the height of cross-strait tensions in the 1960s and 70s, these tunnels stretch for over 60 kilometers, a honeycomb of passageways large enough to move entire infantry divisions unseen. What makes these tunnels particularly remarkable isn't just their scale, but the conditions under which they were created, dug primarily by hand with basic tools, often at night to avoid detection by Chinese reconnaissance.
In the 1960s, they dug tunnels under the mountain, and it enters right there to the sea. They dug these tunnels so that ships could come in under the mountain, resupply with men, weapons, food, and then go back out.
For decades, these tunnels remained among Taiwan's most closely guarded military secrets. When portions were finally opened to the public in the early 2000s, researchers discovered puzzling anomalies. Some passages appear to predate the documented military construction, with different carving techniques and unexplained side chambers not on any official blueprint. Local historians suggest these older sections might date back to Japanese occupation or even earlier periods. The tunnels have gained a supernatural reputation among former soldiers stationed there, who report disembodied voices echoing through certain passages and the persistent feeling of being watched. Some attribute this to the spirits of laborers who died during construction, while others point to more grim possibilities. Rumors persist that some tunnels served as interrogation sites during martial law. The mysterious hieroglyphs of Wanshan Deep in the remote mountains of central Taiwan, where mist clings to ancient cypress trees and trails disappear into dense undergrowth, a discovery in the late 1990s, challenged everything archaeologists thought they knew about Taiwan's written history. In the isolated Wanshan area of Nantou County, a team of hikers seeking shelter from sudden rain ducked into a shallow cave. As they waited for the weather to clear, their flashlights revealed something extraordinary on the rear wall. Hundreds of geometric symbols, animal figures, and abstract patterns carved into the rock face. These petroglyphs, unknown to modern scholarship until that moment, presented an immediate puzzle. Taiwan was not believed to have had an indigenous writing system before Chinese colonization. Initial dating methods suggested the carvings were between 3,000 and 5,000 years old.
There was also the idea that these could have been ancient writings, and so these were the first theories that emerged about rock art,
making them far older than any known writing in Taiwan. The symbols show no clear relationship to Chinese characters, nor to the writing systems of neighboring Philippines or other Pacific islands. Instead, they bear puzzling similarities to certain Indus Valley script elements and even some Mesoamerican symbolic patterns, cultures separated from Taiwan by vast distances. The meaning of these symbols remains elusive. Some depict recognizable animals, deer, boar, and fish that would have been important to ancient inhabitants. Others show spiral patterns and geometric arrangements that some archaeologists believe may represent astronomical observations or seasonal cycles. Most intriguing are the repeated sequences of abstract symbols that appear to follow patterns consistent with primitive writing rather than mere decorative art.
And essentially they are little hollows, and they are surrounded by rings.
Taiwan's indigenous Bunun people, whose traditional territories include the Wanshan area, have no cultural memory of creating these glyphs, yet some elders maintain they were made by the Old Ones, a mysterious people said to have inhabited Taiwan before even the Aboriginal tribes arrived. Several symbols match patterns still used in traditional Bunun textiles, suggesting some cultural memory may have persisted through art even as the script's meaning was lost. The sea goddess temple's secret basement. For centuries, the Grand Mazu Temple in Lukang has stood as one of Taiwan's most important religious sites, dedicated to Mazu, protector goddess of fishermen and sailors. Millions of visitors have passed through its ornate doors, admiring its intricate carvings and burning incense beneath its curved roof. Yet until 2008, no one suspected the temple harbored a secret hidden beneath worshippers' feet for over 200 years. During renovation work to shore up the temple's foundations, workers broke through what they thought was bedrock and instead found themselves staring into a void. Further excavation revealed a previously unknown basement chamber approximately 30 meters square, with walls of fitted stone unlike the construction techniques used in the temple above. The chamber had been deliberately sealed, with its entrance hidden beneath the main altar, suggesting its closure was ceremonial rather than merely structural. What archaeologists found inside defies easy explanation. Unlike the expected religious artifacts, the chamber contained sealed ceramic vessels of unusual design, bronze instruments that appear to be navigational devices unlike any documented in traditional Chinese seafaring, and most puzzling, stone tablets inscribed with characters combining elements of both Chinese and an unknown script similar to that found in parts of Vietnam and maritime Southeast Asia. Analysis of organic material in the chamber provided a startling date. The basement predates the temple above by at least 150 years, suggesting it wasn't built by the temple's known founders but by some previous occupants of the site. Local historians note the location was originally a natural harbor before silting changed the coastline, raising the possibility the structure was originally built by seafarers from elsewhere in Asia. Most controversial are the navigational charts found preserved in lacquered wooden cases. When deciphered, they appear to show detailed sea routes extending across the Pacific to coastlines that some fringe researchers suggest might depict North America. Mainstream archaeologists remain skeptical, proposing the maps likely show parts of the Philippines or other Pacific islands through the imprecise cartography of the era. The cursed jade burial mask. Some of Taiwan's mysteries aren't ancient at all, but modern enigmas with roots in the island's complicated past. Perhaps none has generated more controversy than the artifact, known simply as the Face, a jade burial mask discovered in 1943 during the Japanese colonial occupation. Unearthed during construction of a military facility near Hualien on Taiwan's east coast, the mask is a remarkable piece of craftsmanship, a full face covering carved from a single piece of deep green jade, inlaid with coral eyes and shell teeth. Its age has been estimated at approximately 2,500 years, making it far older than Chinese settlement of the island, yet it bears little resemblance to burial artifacts of Taiwan's indigenous peoples. What transformed this archaeological curiosity into an enduring mystery was the fate of those who handled it. The Japanese officer who supervised its excavation died in a freak accident just 3 days later. The artifact was then sent to a museum in Taipei where 2 curators who catalogued it fell seriously ill within weeks. During the chaos of Japan's withdrawal from Taiwan after World War II, the mask disappeared, only to resurface in 1987 in a private collection in Taichung. The collector, a wealthy businessman, reported experiencing vivid nightmares after acquiring the mask and subsequently died of a stroke, an event his family attributed to the artifact's influence. When the mask was donated to the National Museum of Taiwan History in 1992, multiple staff members requested transfers after reporting unexplained phenomena in the storage room where it was kept, cold spots, equipment malfunctions, and the overwhelming sensation of being watched. Scientific analysis has revealed unusual properties in the jade itself. The stone contains trace minerals inconsistent with known jade deposits in Taiwan or mainland China, raising questions about its origin. More puzzling are microscopic examination results showing the carving was achieved using tools that would have been technologically advanced for the time period, leaving some to suggest it might be of more recent manufacture despite its apparently ancient provenance. The headhunter shrines of Orchid Island. 65 kilometers off Taiwan's southeastern coast lies Orchid Island, Lanyu, home to the indigenous Tao people who have maintained their distinctive culture despite centuries of outside influence. While the island is known for its pristine beaches and flying fish festivals, anthropologists have long been fascinated by a darker aspect of its history. the mysterious stone structures scattered through its jungle interior known as headhunter shrines. Unlike Taiwan's main island indigenous groups who practiced headhunting well into the Japanese colonial period, the Tao have no documented history of this practice. Yet deep in the island's mountainous center, researchers have identified over 30 stone platforms with distinctive architectural features matching ritual sites used for headhunting ceremonies throughout other parts of Australasia, particularly in the Philippines and Borneo. These shrines, consisting of raised stone platforms surrounded by upright megaliths, contain sealed chambers beneath them that have yielded disturbing discoveries. Human cranial fragments that carbon dating places between 400–700 years ago. Isotope analysis of the bone material indicates the individuals were not native to Orchid Island, suggesting they may have been brought from elsewhere. The mystery deepened in 2003 when a previously unknown shrine complex was discovered after a landslide exposed a hidden valley. This larger site featured stone carvings distinct from traditional Tao art, depicting ocean-going vessels and figures wearing elaborate headdresses inconsistent with known Tao cultural practices. Most surprising was the discovery of a ceremonial stone basin containing trace elements of iron and copper, materials not naturally occurring on Orchid Island. When confronted with these discoveries, Tao elders offered a remarkable oral tradition that had nearly been lost. Stories of the red-eyed ones, described as tall outsiders who arrived in large boats and established settlements in the island's interior before eventually disappearing. According to these tales, the Tao people avoided these settlers and their ritual sites out of fear, eventually absorbing some of their cultural practices but never their headhunting rituals. The living fossils of Taijiang. Along Taiwan's southwestern coast lies Taijiang National Park, a sprawling wetland ecosystem of mudflats, mangrove forests, and brackish lagoons. While renowned for its bird-watching opportunities, this seemingly mundane landscape harbors one of Taiwan's most remarkable biological mysteries, creatures that shouldn't exist in the modern era. In 1997, a local fisherman brought a strange catch to National Chung Kung University's Marine Biology Department. A small fish with peculiar lobe-like fins and primitive lung structures that experts immediately recognized as a species of coelacanth, a lineage thought extinct for 65 million years until discovered off South Africa in 1938. What made this find extraordinary was that the specimen was distinctly different from both the African and Indonesian coelacanth populations previously documented, suggesting a third previously unknown population had somehow survived in Taiwan's coastal waters. Subsequent expeditions to specific deep channels within the Taijiang wetlands yielded even more astonishing discoveries. Researchers documented multiple archaic species thriving in these isolated waterways, including a primitive salamander species showing remarkable similarities to 150-million-year-old fossils, and invertebrates with characteristics not seen in their family trees for tens of millions of years. The scientific puzzle centers on how these evolutionary relics survived here when they disappeared elsewhere. The leading theory involves Taijiang's unique hydrogeology. Its freshwater channels connect to deeper, isolated underwater cave systems that maintained stable conditions even as the world above changed dramatically. The constant temperature, limited predation, and isolation of these environments may have created a time capsule where evolution slowed to a crawl. What makes the Taijiang discoveries particularly valuable is that several of these living fossil species possess biochemical properties of significant medical interest. One salamander species demonstrates remarkable tissue regeneration abilities, while certain invertebrates produce compounds with potential applications in cancer treatment. Taiwan's government has designated several zones within the wetlands as restricted research areas, carefully balancing scientific access with ecosystem protection. The abandoned leper colony of Lo Sheng. On the outskirts of New Taipei City, hidden behind overgrown vegetation and surrounded by modern development, stands a haunting reminder of Taiwan's medical history. The abandoned sanatorium of Lo Sheng, established in 1930 during Japanese colonial rule as a forced isolation facility for Hansen's disease, leprosy patients, this complex of buildings remained operational until the 1990s. long after medical science had determined that the disease was not highly contagious and isolation was unnecessary. When demolition plans were announced in 2002 to make way for a transit depot, preservationists gained access to previously restricted areas and made startling discoveries about what had really occurred within its walls. Hidden in a sealed basement beneath the administrative building, researchers found a trove of medical records, photographs, and laboratory equipment documenting experiments conducted on patients without consent, research that appeared to extend far beyond leprosy treatment. The records, dating primarily from 1944 to 1945, in the final stages of World War II, detail procedures involving exposure to various pathogens, surgical trials, and testing of unproven medications. Most disturbing were photographs showing distinctly different facilities than those in the sanatorium's upper levels, specialized operating theaters and laboratory spaces inconsistent with standard leprosy treatment of the era. Architectural analysis revealed that these basement facilities were constructed using different techniques and materials than the rest of the complex, suggesting they may have been built by different contractors, possibly military engineers. Several rooms showed evidence of having been deliberately sealed before the facility changed from Japanese to Chinese nationalist administration, with equipment left in place and documents untranslated. When these discoveries became public, elderly survivors from the facility came forward with accounts never previously recorded. They described certain patients being selected for special treatment and never returning. Japanese military personnel who were not medical staff regularly visiting restricted areas, and unusual deliveries occurring at night. Many of these testimonies match details in the discovered records that these witnesses could not have otherwise known. Historical researchers now believe Lo Sheng may have been connected to Unit 731, Japan's notorious biological warfare research division that conducted human experimentation throughout occupied territories. While the main Unit 731 facilities were in Manchuria, evidence suggests satellite research operations existed elsewhere, with Taiwan's isolated leper colonies providing both subjects and secrecy. The unexplained Keelung Lights. For generations, fishermen along Taiwan's northeastern coast near Keelung have reported strange, luminous phenomena hovering over the water, glowing orbs that appear on moonless nights, performing movements that defy explanation. Locally known as ghost lights or dragon fire, these appearances were long dismissed as superstition or misidentified natural phenomena. That changed in 1992 when the lights were captured on video for the first time by a Taiwanese naval patrol boat. The footage showed multiple orange-yellow spheres approximately 1 to 2 meters in diameter moving in coordinated patterns about 10 meters above the ocean surface. What distinguished these from conventional explanations like ball lightning or bioluminescent marine life was their duration. Over 40 minutes, their apparent intelligent movement, forming geometric patterns, and their interaction when military vessels approached, retreating in formation. Following this incident, Taiwan's Academia Sinica established a scientific monitoring station at Yeliu, a coastal area where sightings were most frequent. Between 1994 and 2001, researchers documented 38 separate appearances of the phenomena, collecting data that eliminated many potential explanations. The lights produced no radar signature, ruled out conventional aircraft. Spectroscopic analysis showed an emission spectrum inconsistent with combustion or electrical discharge, contradicting theories of methane ignition from seafloor gas releases. The phenomena demonstrates several consistent characteristics that continue to puzzle investigators.
They can stop and move and stop and move, and they can move very fast on one occasion.
They appear most frequently during the northeast monsoon season, October-March, clustering around specific geographic locations where underwater topography features dramatic drops. They emit no detectable radiation beyond the visible light spectrum, show no heat signature on infrared cameras, and have never been observed making contact with the water surface or land. Perhaps most intriguing is the correlation between the light's appearances and seismic activity. Statistical analysis reveals that sightings increase significantly in the weeks preceding earthquakes above magnitude 5.0, leading some geophysicists to propose they might be related to electromagnetic effects from tectonic stress. a type of earthquake light previously documented in other parts of the world, but usually occurring over land rather than sea. A minority of researchers have proposed more controversial explanations, noting the waters off Keelung were the site of numerous World War II naval engagements, with several submarines and warships sunk in the vicinity. These theorists suggest the lights might be related to these wrecks, perhaps through some interaction between seawater and deteriorating munitions or nuclear materials. The Japanese military's secret laboratory. In 2006, construction workers expanding a highway tunnel through the mountains of central Taiwan made an unprecedented discovery, a sealed entrance to what would prove to be one of the most extensive underground complexes ever found on the island. Initial investigation revealed a sophisticated facility extending more than 200 meters into the mountainside, clearly of Japanese military origin based on architectural elements and artifacts, yet appearing on no historical records or maps from the colonial period, 1895 and 1945. The complex consisted of multiple chambers with specialized functions, laboratories with remnants of advanced equipment, dormitory-style living quarters, storage areas for chemical materials, and a small generating station. Most significant was the facility's elaborate air filtration system, suggesting work with hazardous materials, and its water purification capabilities far beyond typical military needs of the era. When Japanese historical archives were consulted, a curious gap emerged. While detailed records existed for nearly all military installations in colonial Taiwan, this region showed administrative budget allocations to a project codenamed Cherry Blossom Health Station, with no corresponding documentation of what was actually constructed. Budget records indicated substantial resources directed to this project in 1943 to 1944, precisely when Japan's Unit 731 Biological and Chemical Warfare Division was expanding its operations beyond its main base in Manchuria.
So these were biological warfare specialists. They cut people open and they published scientific papers on the experiments.
Forensic analysis of the site yielded disturbing evidence. Residue and drainage systems contained traces of anthrax spores and botulinum toxin compounds, while specialized containment rooms showed modifications consistent with human captivity rather than animal experimentation. Most telling were document fragments recovered from a partially burned records room, technical notes discussing field efficiency of compounds tested on island subjects, and references to parallel research at other facilities. Historians now believe this facility represented one node in a network of research outposts conducting weapons development too sensitive even for Japan's main biological warfare programs. Taiwan's geographic isolation, combined with its diverse disease environment and availability of colonial subjects for experimentation, made it an ideal location for such work. The facility appears to have been hastily abandoned and sealed in mid-1945 as American forces approached Taiwan with evidence of deliberate document destruction and equipment sabotage. The vanishing village of Xiaolin. In the early morning hours of August 9, 2009, as Typhoon Morakot unleashed unprecedented rainfall on southern Taiwan, the mountain village of Xiaolin disappeared from the face of the earth. A catastrophic landslide buried the entire settlement under millions of tons of mud and rock, claiming 474 lives in Taiwan's deadliest natural disaster in decades. Yet amid the tragedy, recovery crews made discoveries that transformed a natural disaster into an archaeological mystery. As excavation teams worked to recover remains and clear debris, they encountered structures that clearly predated the modern village, stone foundations, artifacts, and building techniques inconsistent with known Chinese or indigenous Taiwanese construction. Carbon dating of recovered wooden beams suggested some structures were approximately 400 years old, placing them earlier than the officially recorded establishment of Xiaolin Village by Han Chinese settlers in the late 1600s. The anomalies multiplied as excavation continued deeper. At approximately 15 meters below the original village level, workers uncovered an intact stone wall with distinctive diagonal bracing patterns, matching Spanish colonial fortifications found in the Philippines but never before documented in Taiwan.
Northern Taiwan was a Spanish colony. Their main base operation was down that way, Keelung City, but they had a fort
Historical records confirm Spanish attempts to establish trading posts on Taiwan in the early 1600s, though no successful permanent settlements were thought to have been established in the island's interior. Most puzzling was the discovery of a sealed underground chamber containing European-manufactured glass bottles, metal implements, and what appeared to be navigational instruments, alongside artifacts of clearly Chinese origin, suggesting an undocumented period of coexistence or trade. A partial ship's log written in a mixture of Spanish and Portuguese further complicated the historical narrative, as it referenced a settlement called Nova Formosa in a location consistent with Xiaolin's position. Historians are now reconsidering Taiwan's colonial history, proposing that European settlement may have penetrated further into the island than previously believed, with Xiaolin potentially representing a multicultural trading post where European, Chinese, and indigenous Taiwanese populations interacted. A narrative absent from conventional historical accounts of Taiwan, which typically emphasize Chinese and Japanese influence. The disaster itself has added another layer of mystery. Geological surveys indicate the landslide that destroyed Xiaolin was unusual in its behavior, moving faster and traveling further than typical for landslides in the region. Some researchers suggest the presence of these buried structures may have created unusual subsurface conditions that contributed to the catastrophic ground failure during the typhoon. The 8 Immortals cave mummies deep in the remote mountains of Taiwan's Taroko National Park, where marble cliffs rise thousands of feet from narrow gorges, lies a cave system known locally as the 8 Immortals dwelling. Named after figures in Chinese mythology, these caves remained largely unexplored until 1997, when a geological survey team ventured deeper than previous expeditions and made a discovery that continues to challenge our understanding of Taiwan's ancient populations. In a dry chamber approximately 500 meters from the cave entrance, researchers discovered the naturally mummified remains of 13 individuals arranged in a semicircle around what appeared to be a ceremonial fire pit. The exceptional preservation, a result of the cave's constant low humidity and temperature, allowed for remarkable detail. Intact skin, hair, and even facial features remained visible, along with elaborate tattoos covering much of their bodies. What made these remains immediately controversial was their physical appearance. Anthropological analysis indicated they were neither ethnically Chinese nor consistent with Taiwan's recognized indigenous tribes. Instead, they displayed distinctive Polynesian characteristics more commonly associated with distant Pacific islands. Radiocarbon dating placed them at approximately 1,300 years old, predating Chinese settlement of Taiwan, but also earlier than mainstream theories about Polynesian migration through the region. The mummies wore clothing made from plant fibers unlike those used by Taiwan's indigenous peoples, and were surrounded by artifacts that further confuse the picture. Fishing implements made from human bone rather than animal bone, a practice documented in certain Melanesian cultures, sophisticated woven baskets preserved by the dry conditions, and most puzzling jade ornaments whose chemical composition matched sources in distant New Zealand rather than any known Taiwanese jade deposit. DNA analysis has provided some clarity while raising new questions. Genetic markers show connections to both Taiwanese Aboriginal peoples and more distant Pacific Island populations, suggesting these individuals might represent an intermediate migratory population, perhaps evidence of the theorized connection between Taiwan's ancient inhabitants and the ancestors of Polynesian peoples who would later spread throughout the Pacific. Their cause of death adds another layer of mystery. All 13 individuals appear to have died simultaneously with no evidence of trauma or disease. Residue analysis from the fire pit revealed traces of plants with psychoactive properties, leading some researchers to propose they may have participated in a ritual suicide or ceremonial death. Others suggest they might have been victims of volcanic gas that occasionally vents through certain cave systems in the region. The sunken Goiwood fleet of Kaohsiung. For decades, fishermen working the waters off Taiwan's southwestern port of Kaohsiung reported their nets occasionally snagging on underwater obstructions that didn't appear on any maritime charts. Local divers told stories of massive, shadowy shapes looming in the murky depths. These accounts were largely dismissed until 2018, when a comprehensive sonar mapping project by Taiwan's Coast Guard made a stunning discovery: an extensive graveyard of warships lying on the seabed that somehow escaped historical documentation for over 70 years. The underwater survey revealed at least 28 distinct wrecks clustered in an area approximately 15 square kilometers. What makes this discovery particularly puzzling is that while Taiwan's waters saw significant naval action during World War II, no single battle or event in recorded history accounts for such a concentration of sunken vessels in this specific location. Moreover, the wrecks appear to include ships of multiple nationalities, primarily Japanese, but also vessels of apparent American and even German design. Initial diving expeditions have raised more questions than answers. Many of the ships show evidence of deliberate scuttling rather than combat damage, intentionally opened seacocks and minimal shrapnel impact. Several vessels had been systematically stripped of identifying markings, weapon systems, and valuable equipment before sinking. Most curiously, the arrangement of the wrecks suggests they were deliberately positioned in a roughly circular pattern, with larger vessels on the perimeter and smaller ships clustered in the center. Historical researchers combing through Japanese, American, and Taiwanese archives have found a tantalizing clue. Brief references in Japanese naval communications from April 1945 to Operation Kikusui Harbor, an undetailed contingency plan implemented as American forces approached Taiwan. Some historians now theorize this might represent a desperate Japanese attempt to create an underwater barrier or defensive position as their naval strategy collapsed in the war's final stages. The most controversial aspect of the discovery involves several ships of unusual configuration that don't match known warship designs from the period. These vessels feature reinforced hulls with unusual hatches and specialized equipment mounting points that some marine archaeologists suggest might have been designed for launching midget submarines or other specialized weapons. The technology appears more advanced than typical W-2-era construction, leading to speculation about experimental craft. Environmental concerns have complicated investigation, as the wrecks contain significant amounts of unexploded ordnance and deteriorating fuel bunkers that threaten local marine ecosystems. Taiwan's government has designated the area a restricted maritime zone while developing plans for both scientific documentation and environmental remediation. The radioactive hot springs of Yangmingshan. Nestled within the volcanic landscape of Yangmingshan National Park just outside Taipei lie some of Taiwan's most popular hot springs, natural thermal baths that draw thousands of visitors seeking relaxation and the purported health benefits of mineral-rich waters. Yet these same springs harbor a scientific anomaly that has puzzled researchers for decades: radiation levels far exceeding what geologists consider normal, yet apparently causing no harm to regular bathers. First documented by Japanese scientists during the colonial period in the 1910s, the springs in the Beitou and Shinbeitou areas contain radon concentrations up to 750 becquerels per liter, over 10 times the level typically considered safe for prolonged exposure. When Taiwan's Atomic Energy Council conducted comprehensive surveys in the 1980s, they discovered something even more perplexing. Certain springs showed dramatic fluctuations in radiation levels that didn't correspond with any known geological mechanism.
So when we arrive at the hot spring, we first of all make sure it's safe to sample.
The mystery deepened in 1997 when medical researchers from National Taiwan University began studying long-term hot spring workers and residents of the area. Despite decades of daily exposure to radiation levels that safety standards suggest should increase cancer risk, they found cancer rates approximately 30% lower than Taiwan's national average. Blood samples from these individuals showed unusual cellular properties, enhanced DNA repair mechanisms, and immune system profiles unlike those in the general population. Geologists have proposed several theories to explain the spring's unusual properties. The prevailing scientific explanation involves the unique mineral composition of Yangmingshan's volcanic system, which contains rare earth elements and thorium deposits that interact with the underground water in ways not fully understood. These elements may bind with the water in compounds that, while registering as radioactive on instruments, interact with human biology differently than other radiation forms. Alternative explanations range from the mainstream to the speculative. Some researchers believe the spring's high mineral content provides micronutrients that counteract radiation effects through hormesis, the biological phenomenon where low doses of normally harmful agents produce beneficial results. More controversial theories suggest the springs might contain unidentified microorganisms that have evolved to metabolize radiation, potentially providing protective effects to bathers through microbial interaction. What's certain is that the springs defy conventional understanding of radiation exposure. In most environments worldwide, comparable radiation levels would trigger immediate health warnings and restricted access. Yet in Yangmingshan, people have bathed in these waters for centuries with apparent benefit rather than harm.